My parents didn't want children at the Christmas party, but when I arrived at their house I saw, Christmas has always been my favorite time of year. Not because of the gifts, not because of the decorations, but because, for 1 month, the world feels warmer. Even the coldest places are filled with lights, laughter, and the promise of family. At least, that's how I used to feel, until my own family made it painfully clear that my son and I were no longer welcome. It started with an invitation, a formal one, sent in an elegant white envelope with gold lettering. You are cordially invited to the annual family Christmas party at Mom and Dad's house. Dress code, festive formal. Please RSVP by December 1st. I smiled when I saw it. Even after years of feeling like the black sheep, I still got excited about this party. I imagined my son, Nathan, wearing his little red sweater, running around with his cousins. The way his eyes would sparkle at the sight of the huge Christmas tree in my parents' house. This would be his first Christmas party with the whole family, and I was looking forward to it. But as I kept reading, I felt my stomach drop. At the bottom, in small, delicate print, was a note that changed everything. Due to space limitations, this year's event will be adults only. Thank you for understanding. I stared at those words, reading them over and over again. An adults-only Christmas party? That had never been a rule before. And I knew, deep in my gut, this wasn't about space. This was about me. And more importantly, this was about my son. I picked up the phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice syrupy sweet. Sweetheart, did you get the invitation? I cut straight to the point. Yeah. What's this about no kids at Christmas? A long pause. Then, an exaggerated sigh. Oh, honey, it's just, well, you know how chaotic it gets with little ones running around. Your father and I thought it would be nice to have a more relaxed evening this year. I clenched my jaw. But all the other grandkids are older. Nathan is the only little one. So what? You don't want him there? Silence. Then, she laughed nervously. Honey, don't make this about you. My stomach twisted, because there it was. The truth, buried under fake pleasantries. They didn't want my son there. They didn't want me there. I tried to keep my voice steady. So, let me get this straight. My sister's kids, who are teenagers, can go. But Nathan, your own grandson, is too much of a burden to invite? She sighed again, this time sharper. Sweetheart, it's just one night. You can come alone. I let out a bitter laugh. You want me to leave my son behind on Christmas? It's not on Christmas, dear. It's just the party. I gritted my teeth. It's the only time the whole family gets together. And you're telling me my child isn't welcome? Don't be so dramatic. That was the last straw. My grip tightened on the phone. You know what, Mom? Thanks for the invite. But if my son isn't welcome, neither am I. Then I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. That they'd realize how cruel they were being. That they'd call me back, apologize, tell me they had made a mistake. But the call never came. Instead, the family group chat exploded. First, it was my older sister, Claire. You really told Mom you're not coming? Over one little rule? Then my cousin, Dan. Dude, just get a babysitter. Why do you have to be difficult? And finally, my younger sister, Rachel, who always played the peacemaker. Come on, can we not turn this into a whole thing? It's just a party. No need to make it bigger than it is. I stared at my screen, my blood boiling. Because it wasn't just a party. It was about respect. About my son being treated like he didn't belong. And the worst part? Not a single person stood up for me. Not one. I turned off my phone and walked over to the couch where Nathan sat, playing with his toy train. He looked up at me with his bright, innocent eyes. Daddy, are we going to Grandma's for Christmas? I swallowed the lump in my throat and knelt beside him. No, buddy, not this year. His little face fell. But why? I forced a smile. Because we're going to do something even better. And right then, I made a decision. If they didn't want us, we didn't need them. Because I was about to give my son a Christmas he'd never forget. And when my family found out, they were going to regret ever shutting us out. I woke up the next morning with one thought in my head. This Christmas was going to be different. Not filled with forced smiles and uncomfortable small talk. not spent sitting at a table where I wasn't truly welcome, not pretending like my son's absence wouldn't be noticed. No, this Christmas, I was going to make sure Nathan had the best holiday of his life. And my family, they were going to realize exactly what they had lost. The first thing I did was cancel all my plans. No more worrying about what I was going to wear to a party we weren't invited to. No more stressing about what expensive gift I had to bring for the family gift exchange. No more pretending I cared about people who clearly didn't care about us. Instead, I sat Nathan down at the kitchen table, pulled out a notepad, and said, "All right, buddy, what's the most magical thing you can think of for Christmas?" His eyes lit up. "Anything? Anything?" He thought for a moment, then grinned. "I want to see real snow." I smiled, because that was something I could make happen. We didn't get snow where we lived, but a few hours away, there was a winter festival, complete with sledding, Christmas markets, and even a tree lighting ceremony that would make any Hallmark movie jealous. It was perfect. So instead of sitting around, waiting for my family to change their minds, I booked a weekend trip for me and Nathan. And the second I told him, he jumped up and down, cheering, "Daddy, this is going to be the best Christmas ever." And just like that, I didn't care about missing that stupid party, because my son was happy, and that was all that mattered. But just as I was starting to let go of the resentment, my phone buzzed, and when I looked at the screen, I knew my family wasn't done yet. This time, it was Claire. No passive-aggressive texts, just a straight-up phone call. I hesitated for a second, then answered. She didn't even say hello. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I blinked. "Good morning to you too, Claire." She scoffed. "Seriously? You're really going to be this dramatic?" I sat down, rubbing my temples. "Dramatic? Claire, they uninvited my son from Christmas." She groaned. "It wasn't personal." I laughed. "It wasn't personal? He's the only kid who got left out." Silence. Then, she dropped her voice, trying to sound reasonable. "Mom and Dad just wanted a quiet evening. You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I exhaled sharply. "Claire, they made it bigger. Not me." Another sigh. Then she said something that made me clench my fists. "Look, just come to the party. You don't have to bring him." I closed my eyes, my patience snapping. "Claire, listen to yourself." "What?" "You're asking me to ditch my kid on Christmas to go to a party where he's not welcome." Silence. Then she scoffed. "It's just one night." I gritted my teeth. "You know what? You all have fun, but don't expect me to be part of this family anymore." Then I hung up, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Nathan and I left for the trip 2 days before Christmas. We went sledding. We drank hot cocoa with way too many marshmallows and watched the Christmas parade, bundled up in scarves and hats. And on Christmas Eve, we stood under the biggest Christmas tree I had ever seen, watching the lights twinkle against the snowy sky. Nathan grabbed my hand, his little voice filled with wonder. "This is the best Christmas ever, Daddy." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Yeah, buddy, it is." And in that moment, I realized I had been wrong. Christmas wasn't about family. It was about being with the people who love you. And my family had never really been that. But just when I thought it was over, my phone buzzed again. And when I saw the message, I knew my family wasn't finished yet. Because now they were angry, and they were about to show their true colors. The morning after Christmas, I woke up to dozens of missed calls and unread messages. I knew exactly who they were from, and I already knew what they were going to say. I sighed, rolled over in bed, and picked up my phone. And just as I expected, my family had completely lost it. The group chat was a mess. My mom had sent a long, dramatic message about how disappointed she was. My dad had chimed in, saying I had disrespected the family by skipping the party. My cousin Dan, who always loved stirring the pot, added, "Dude, it's just one party. Was it really worth causing all this drama?" And my personal favorite, Claire, my sister, had sent one final, furious text. "I hope you're happy. Mom cried all night because of you." I rolled my eyes. Because of course, I was the bad guy now. Not them. Not the people who had excluded my child. Not the people who had made sure we didn't feel welcome. No, it was me, for not showing up and pretending everything was fine. I stared at my phone for a long moment. Then, I smiled, because for the first time, I wasn't falling for it. I wasn't going to send a long, emotional apology. I wasn't going to defend myself. I wasn't going to beg to be accepted. Instead, I sent a single message. I'm glad you all had fun. Nathan and I did too. Then I put my phone on silent, because I didn't need to hear their response. I already knew what they were going to say, but nothing they said mattered anymore, because I had finally realized I didn't need them. Nathan and I spent the rest of the day playing in the snow. We built a snowman with a crooked scarf. We had the world's longest snowball fight. We ate cookies by the fire until we couldn't move, and I didn't think about my family once, until later that night, when I got a message from someone I didn't expect. It was Rachel, my younger sister, the only one who hadn't said anything in the group chat. Her message was short. "Hey, can we talk?" I hesitated, because Rachel wasn't like the rest of them. She had always been the quiet one, the observer. She wasn't confrontational. She didn't pick sides. And if she was reaching out now, it meant something. I stepped outside, the cold air stinging my face, and called her. She answered on the first ring. She sounded hesitant. Hey. Silence. Then, she sighed. "I just wanted to say, I think you were right." I froze, because that was the last thing I expected to hear. I leaned against the railing, my breath visible in the freezing air. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. Then, she told me everything. At the party, my parents had gone out of their way to act like nothing was wrong. They smiled, laughed, and pretended I didn't exist. But behind the scenes, it was obvious that something was missing. "Mom tried to brush it off," Rachel admitted. "Told everyone you were being difficult. But people noticed, Brian." I swallowed hard. "Who?" "Pretty much everyone. Aunt Deb kept asking where you were. Grandma looked so confused when she didn't see Nathan." I shook my head. "So what? They just acted like we didn't matter?" Rachel exhaled. "Basically. And when Claire tried to guilt-trip them about you not being there, Dad just said, well, he made his choice." I clenched my jaw. Of course he did. Because to him, I was the one who left, not them. Rachel's voice softened. "They miss you, Brian, but they'll never admit it, and they'll never apologize." I laughed bitterly. "Then they don't really miss me, do they?" Silence. And then, she said something I didn't expect. "I don't want things to be like this." I froze. "What?" "I don't want to lose you too," she admitted. I ran a hand through my hair. "Rachel, it's not me that's walking away. It's them." She was quiet. Then, she sighed. "I know. I just wanted to say I get it. And I don't blame you for any of this." For the first time, I felt a tiny bit of relief. Because finally, someone saw it. Someone in my family understood that I wasn't just being petty or dramatic. I was just done. I smiled a little. "Thanks, Rach. That means a lot." She hesitated again. Then, she cleared her throat. "Hey, can I come see you and Nathan sometime?" I blinked. She had never asked that before. "You want to come here?" "Yeah," she said, a little shy. "I think I picked the wrong side of this. And I'd really like to spend Christmas with the people who actually care." My chest felt warm. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't completely alone in my family. I smiled. "Yeah, Rach, we'd love that." When I hung up, I looked at my son, fast asleep in bed. I sat down beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his face. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. I had chosen him, and no amount of guilt, no amount of family pressure, no amount of emotional blackmail would ever make me regret that. Because this was what family was supposed to be. But my parents? They weren't done yet. Because when they realized I wasn't coming back, they decided to do something even worse. Something that would make me question everything. And this time, it was personal. I thought they'd give up. I thought after ignoring their guilt trips, after making it clear that I wasn't playing their game, they'd just let it go. But my parents? They weren't the kind of people to accept losing. And when manipulation didn't work, they decided to do something worse. They decided to hurt me. It started with a call from my landlord. I was at work when I got the voicemail. "Hey Brian, I just wanted to give you a heads up. I got a call from someone claiming to be your father. Said you were moving out and wanted to end your lease early. Obviously, I didn't process anything without confirming with you first, but I figured you'd want to know." I felt my stomach drop, because I already knew what this was. A scare tactic. A pathetic attempt to make me panic and come crawling back. But I wasn't falling for it. I called my landlord back, furious. "Hey, Mark, thanks for letting me know. That was a complete lie. I have no plans to move out." Mark chuckled. "Yeah, I figured. The guy was weird. Kept insisting that it was urgent, that I needed to process it immediately." I clenched my jaw. Of course, because that's how they operated. Create chaos. Make me panic. Force me into needing them again. But not this time. This time, I was ready. I texted my dad. No emotion. No anger. Just pure, cold truth. "I know what you did. It didn't work. Don't contact me again." 10 minutes later, he called me. I let it go to voicemail. And when I listened, I laughed, because it was the most pathetic thing I'd ever heard. "You're really going to do this, Brian? You're really going to cut off your own family over a stupid Christmas party? I hope you realize how selfish you're being. You're tearing this family apart." Then, the final line. The one sentence that proved he had no regrets. "You made your choice, and now you'll have to live with it." I shook my head, because this was why I left. Not just because they excluded my son, not just because they didn't care, but because they believed I owed them everything. And if I didn't play by their rules, they'd do whatever it took to punish me. I blocked his number. Then I called my landlord again. "Hey, Mark, can we add a note to my file? No one, not even family, is allowed to make changes to my lease unless it comes from me directly." "Already done, Brian," he said. "And if that guy calls again, I'll let you know." I smiled. "Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it." Because unlike my parents, some people actually had my back. I wish that had been the end of it. But my mother? She wasn't going to let this go, because a few days later, she did something even worse. Something that nearly made me snap. She tried to go through Nathan. I picked him up from school like usual. He was chatty, happy, telling me all about his day. Then, he pulled something out of his backpack. A Christmas card. "Mrs. Johnson gave me this today," he said, handing it to me. I frowned, flipping it over. And the second I saw the handwriting, I felt my blood boil. Because it wasn't from his teacher. It was from my mother. I ripped open the envelope. Inside was a neatly written note, disguised as something sweet. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Grandma and Grandpa miss you so much. We can't wait to see you again soon. Daddy must be very busy, but don't worry. We're always thinking about you. We hope he brings you by soon. Love you forever, Grandma." I clenched my fists, because I knew exactly what this was. A manipulation tactic. They weren't allowed to contact me, so they tried to get through to Nathan instead, trying to make him question me, trying to make me look like the bad guy. And that was the moment I snapped. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Nathan was still watching me, completely unaware of what was happening. So I smiled, kneeling beside him. "Hey, buddy, do you miss Grandma and Grandpa?" He shrugged. "Not really. I don't think about them much." I felt a wave of relief, because I had worried. I had worried that he'd feel the absence, that he'd long for them the way I had once longed for their approval. But he didn't, because I had given him something better. A life without them. A life where he was wanted. And my parents? They were nothing more than strangers to him now. That night, I wrote a final email. "No more games. No more drama. No more contact. This is the last time I will say this. Stop contacting me. Stop trying to involve my son. You made it clear that we were not part of this family, and I'm finally accepting that. You don't get to decide when you want to be involved in our lives. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Do not contact me again. Do not send Nathan anything. If you do, I will pursue legal action. This is not a warning. This is a promise. Goodbye." And just like that, I was done. For real this time. No more guilt. No more waiting for them to change. No more hoping for an apology that would never come. Because I had finally realized. I didn't lose a family. I had escaped one. After I sent that final email, I expected one last fight. A dramatic response from my mother. Another guilt trip from my sister. Some kind of final attempt to keep their control over me. But for the first time, they did nothing. No calls. No messages. No surprise visits. Just silence. And that That was when I knew. I had won. At first, it felt strange. For so long, I had lived with the weight of them, trying to earn their approval, trying to be the son they wanted me to be, trying to make them love Nathan the way he deserved. And now, that weight was gone, and I finally had room to breathe. A few weeks later, Rachel came to visit. She showed up at my doorstep, arms full of presents for Nathan. He ran to her immediately, eyes wide with excitement. "Aunt Rachel." She grinned, hugging him tightly. "Hey, buddy. I've missed you." I watched them, my heart feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Real family. Not forced. Not fake. Not conditional. Just love. Later that night, after Nathan had gone to bed, Rachel and I sat on the couch, drinking hot cocoa. She looked at me, hesitant. "I just want you to know, I don't agree with them." I nodded, letting her continue. "I think they messed up. Big time. And I get why you had to cut them off." She sighed, staring into her cup. "I guess I just feel guilty. Like maybe I should have done more." I smiled a little. "Rachel, you don't have to carry their guilt. You're here now. That's all that matters." Her eyes softened. "Yeah, I guess it is." After she left, I sat in Nathan's room for a while, just watching him sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling, his little fingers clutching his stuffed reindeer. He looked so peaceful, so safe, and that's when it truly hit me. I had done the right thing. By cutting them off, I hadn't taken anything away from him. I had given him everything. A life without pain, a life without guilt, a life where he would never have to question if he was wanted. And that was all I had ever wanted for him. A few months later, I heard through the family grapevine that my parents were still telling people I had overreacted, that I had chosen to abandon the family, that I was punishing them for no reason. I didn't care, because their opinions didn't matter anymore. Their version of the story didn't change the truth. They excluded us. They pushed us away. And I finally realized I didn't have to chase after them anymore, because I had something better. I had Nathan. I had Rachel. I had a real family. One night, as I tucked Nathan in, he looked up at me sleepily. "Daddy?" "Yeah, buddy?" He yawned, curling into his pillow. "I love our Christmas." I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Me too, kid." Then, his little voice, barely above a whisper, "Best Christmas ever." And in that moment, I knew we were finally completely free, and we would never, ever look back.